J Show. Today we have a great show, stock full of information about hormones. So we have Dr. Carolyn Dean, and she's here talking about a book that she wrote a while ago in 2005, but still a ton of really, really good information about hormones. So welcome, Dr. Dean.
Well, CJ, you have to call me Carolyn.
I will. Don't worry. I just started off with Dr. Dean. I will call you Carolyn from here on out.
Yes, it was a 2005 book and 10 years ago now. And I think some of the criticism of that book is women expected me to talk about bioidentical hormone replacement and how they could be taking estrogen, progesterone in order to deal with their symptoms. And I think that's way down the line.
Yes.
There's so much that happens with the hormones before you have to get to that point.
Mm-hmm. And that's actually the thing that I appreciate most about your book, because I'm now 51, which is, I understand, the average age when women start hitting perimenopausal systems or premenopausal or whatever you want to call it. And I'm getting hot flash before menses, all those kinds of things. And so I feel like your book came at the perfect time where I can now try a whole bunch of things, preventative measures, so that I don't have to have bioidentical hormones or hormone replacement therapy, because I think there are a bunch of things that you should try, like you said, before you even get to that point. And that's one thing I'm so thank you, Carolyn.
You're welcome. You're welcome. And I think part of the problem is, as we both know, that women will become so stressed, so busy, that they do just want a pill or something quick fix. But as we're coming to know more and more, when you do take a medication, even though it's said to be bioidentical, supposedly natural, it still is not your own hormones.
Right.
So yes,
there's so much more. There's so many more natural, truly natural things that we could do in terms of diet, eliminating toxins, exercise, that your book lists, that I think and supplements. I mean, so many things that we can do before we get there. And that's what's most exciting, because it's something within our control. Whereas I feel like hormones are kind of this confusing thing. It's like this thing that we hit. And what I realized from reading your book is that I didn't know anything about hormones, really. And so I wanted to ask you, just, because I think most of us, when we read books about hormones, for me at least, my own experience is I had a hot flash, and then all of a sudden I became interested in hormones because I had one of the symptoms of them. But I was surprised to see that actually, and sorry for my ignorance here because I'm not a doctor, is that there's hormones in our gonads. So for women, it's in our ovaries, and for men, it's in our testes. And when people talk about hormone imbalances, they're typically talking about that. Right?
Yes. So right away, they're specializing.
Yes.
They're compartmentalizing those little gonads.
Right.
That's everything. And I don't know how much I talked about it in the Hormone Balance book, but certainly since then, I've been talking about the triad. And we'll get to this, but just to start with, the triad of thyroid, adrenals, and sex hormones.
Mm-hmm. And so let's talk about the sex hormones, because that's the one that we're most familiar, and everyone's like, tell me about this. Right. So what is happening for, I wanted to look at both women and men and figure out what's happening for women with their hormones. And and what I thought was interesting, that I never even made the connection, there's something happening. I'm talking about when we hit our 30s and 40s. I know there's things that are happening in puberty and such, but when we hit potentially 30, 40, 50, there's a perimenopausal thing that's happening, then there's a menopausal thing that's happening, and they're different in terms of hormones. What's happening? What's happening to me?
Well, there's this medical thing that you can describe, or the physiologic thing that I learned in medical school. And then there's the real thing that's happening. Because in the textbook, what they say is women have their estrogen and their progesterone, and there's a balance of the two. When you're pregnant, your progesterone goes sky high. And progesterone is kind of a feel-good sex hormone. So that's why most women feel good during pregnancy.
Right.
And then there's the aftermath. And so the estrogen is said to be, not opposite of that, but then what's happening now, women are talking about estrogen dominance, where you don't have as much progesterone as you do estrogen, and then the estrogen dominance is causing women to suffer weight gain and bloating and maybe some of the insomnia and symptoms that we correlate with menopause.
Those are premenopausal symptoms, right? Or are they pre and post?
Pre and post, yes, okay. Because it's and again, that's all tied up in the reality of why the hormones go out of balance. Now, supposedly as we age, our estrogen goes down, and that's why in the 50s the doctors who discovered estrogen and made it into synthetic estrogen. First, it was the estrogen from pregnant mare's urine. That Premarin.
Right.
People may remember that name. That came from pregnant mares.
Right.
And when I guess that source dried up,
right,
they began looking at the synthetic estrogen. And it wasn't for decades that they finally realized, oops, estrogen alone without progesterone is causing cancer. And so they, instead of adding natural progesterone, because that's hard to come by, they use synthetic progesterone. And supposedly it helped balance the estrogen, but it still wasn't a cure, and it still had its side effects. So then in the natural medicine community, doctors started talking about bioidentical hormones, bioidentical estrogen and progesterone and testosterone. And all that meant is that making the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone from something like wild yam chemicals, and it's still a chemical, right. But instead of coal tar, they made it from wild yams. It sounds better, but right. it is still a chemical, and supposedly it is safer, but we don't even have the studies to prove that. So, just sort of the end run is if you are on bioidenticals, just take a smidgen. If you're told to take a whole cc of a bioidentical cream and slather it on your body, take a quarter of a cc and see how your body feels.
And I actually had a period where I was on bioidentical hormones for a short period of time, and oddly it resolved itself. But the doctor was screaming at me because I'm like, I'm just using, a quarter of what you say. And she's like, no, use exactly what is said. I'm like, that's what's been tested. I'm like, I don't know, but I don't like using a lot of these medicines, so I'm doing the minimum that I could do and still have the results. And she's like, when we got into a big argument, and then I was like, forget it, I'm not taking these anymore. And then my issue resolved itself, oddly. But so going back to, so for women, there's, and what's so interesting is, so perimenopause is this like delicate dance between your progesterone and estrogen. It's either you have too much estrogen or too little progesterone. That's what happens perimenopause. And then after you hit menopause, which is defined as you haven't had your period in a year, then what's happening to your hormones?
Well, I think that's where the environmental toxins kick in, because there are toxins that mimic estrogen. And they're called xenoestrogens. And they can be plastics, they can be medications, they can be just toxins in the environment. They can be yeast toxins from yeast overgrowth.
I get it. Okay, got it. So after you hit menopause and you don't have periods, then you could actually have excess estrogen, but it's not necessarily produced by your gonads, your ovaries, or whatever. It's actually produced through external factors.
Exactly. Mimicking the estrogens, and even making your own hormones is touch and go these days, because if you don't take the proper fats, then you're not going to have the building blocks for your hormones. Cholesterol, fat, is the building block for all our sex hormones. So you take the group of women now who are being told to take statin cholesterol drugs. Their cholesterol is going to be low, their hormones are going to be low, they're going to be suffering. What is it? What is it? What is it? Seriously, I could be listing dozens of things, and I won't, because I'll just say it's toxins. You have to detoxify.
Right.
You cannot imagine that you can be healthy when you're taking, half a dozen medications, or when you're eating a bad diet, and when it's all fried food and
Right.
donuts.
My favorite. Okay, so it sounds like, and what's so interesting to me, and this is the big aha from reading your book, is that, it's so much easier to go, I'm getting older. It's because my progesterone and estrogen are out of balance, and it's because I'm aging. But you pointed out a bunch of different factors. It's the medications that we're taking, like statin. Or if we're taking that, could actually create a hormonal imbalance. It's what we're eating that could actually cause a hormonal imbalance. It's the external factors, toxins.
Yeah, and yeast overgrowth. You think of the number of women who take antibiotics and then, I get some vaginitis, that's normal. My doctor just gives me a medication for it, and on they go, without realizing that in their intestines, they're producing 178 different yeast byproducts. 178. And each one of those can act kind of like an allergen or some sort of toxin to the body. There's alcohols and acetaldehyde. Acetaldehyde causes brain fog. It's known as the hangover chemical in people who drink alcohol.
Right.
So you're getting brain fog. It's this menopause. I mean, again, there's so many interactions, and I'm not going to dwell on them. And I'll say the same about thyroid. When your thyroid is low, you have all these symptoms. I just treat people for mineral deficiency, toxicity, and put them on a yeast program. And that's it. I mean, the solution, to my mind, is simple. I've worked this out. I've been at this for 50 years. 50 years. And yes, I am in menopause.
Right.
I've been there. I went through menopause at 45.
Yeah, and it sounds like from reading your book, there are lots of things that you hit a lot of the common symptoms that people and hit it hard, right? And so it's interesting to hear that, so before you try the bioidenticals or the hormone replacement therapy, it's about, diet. It's about yeast, getting your yeast down, which is part of diet. It's about minerals. I mean, those are the first lines of attack. Okay, so I want to go back to what's happening. So as I understand, let me see if I can summarize this. So what women have this perimenopause and menopause, but basically perimenopause or estrogen and progesterone is doing this very delicate dance just from our gonads alone, not in taking into account all these other things that are exogenous to it, like toxins and things like that. Now, one of the things that people always ask is, how long does it last? And it's a mystery, right? Is there a definitive answer, or is there a way that we can control how long it lasts?
Well, it's, I guess doctors who prescribe the synthetic hormones or even bioidentical, that's why your doctor said, take the full amount.
Right.
Because they're trying to suppress the symptoms more than anything. And they know that it takes a certain, hammer and tong thing to suppress the symptoms. And what you want to do is strike a balance with going through diet detox and remineralization, and then get to the point where whatever's left over, then you treat with the bioidenticals. And at that point, you don't even take a pill. You don't slather your whole body. I do recommend very low dose vaginal cream. in bioidentical estrogen, progesterone. You can even use a bit of testosterone. And that way you prevent vaginal atrophy and the pain of intercourse.
Right.
And it's absorbed through your body so that it can stop the hot flashes. But you see, especially using it vaginally, if you take a little too much, your breasts are going to feel tender. You don't want that.
Right.
And so that's what doctors should be saying to women. Maybe take enough that you feel a little bit of breast tenderness and then back off.
Right.
Because then it's hitting the areas in your body that are sensitive to the hormones, which is your breast.
Right. That's brilliant. You're brilliant. I guess 50 years of all this hard work is paying off. Okay, what's happening? What's happening to men?
I am brilliant.
You're brilliant. Well, no, because that really makes sense. Because literally, when I was doing the bioidentical, they had me doing it in my inner thighs, and it was a lot. Like, probably a palmful of, like one squirt of of lotion, boom, all over my legs, and one was on my left leg and right leg, depending on it was just absurd. But, and it was a lot.
If you're in a hot climate, here I am in Maui, it would be just dripping down my legs with sweat. It's ridiculous.
I don't even want to think about that. Okay. For men, what's happening to men? So my husband's like, well, what's happening for me with my hormones? I'm like, I don't know. I'll ask Carolyn.
Well, it's similar. The testosterone, you can have xenotestosterone. You can have testosterone in the environment that's blocking your own testosterone. It's in men, it's even worse because so many more of them are on statin drugs, so their cholesterol is bottoming out. So it's cleaning up the diet, and I really don't have a good focus on testosterone hormone replacement for men, because I've seen some studies, they say, oh yes, it's okay to do, there's no side effects, and other studies, well, we don't know yet. So it's a difficult thing to pinpoint or generalize on. You would have to look at each individual. You would do the hormone studies. At one point, I was doing a lot of saliva testing on people and finding out, for example, through the month, they would do a series of saliva samples because the hormones are all over the place.
Right.
And, you don't want to just go in at a certain point of the day and take a blood sample of your hormones, because it could be different within a couple of hours.
Okay, then how valid are those tests then? Or how do you take the tests so that they're valid?
And that I really don't know. It's almost like you have to test every day for a month for a woman to see what the cycling is. Because a woman, even with a hysterectomy, who doesn't have a menstrual period, they'll say, well, my hormones are still cycling. So the hormones do have a mind of their own. And I gave up doing the blood test for hormones because I just go to my plan of remineralization and hydration and detoxification and the yeast program.
And so if you do, so basically the test, and I was reading a bunch about the test, it seems like hour by hour your hormones could change depending on where you are in your menstrual cycle. Your test could change depending on the day of the month, depending on the moon. Like, it seems like your hormones could change.
Yes.
So the saliva test and the blood test have those same problems, because regardless of whether you're measuring, what are they really measuring? I don't know. What are they measuring?
Well, the saliva people and who is it? Meridian Lab up in Seattle way, Dr. Jonathan Wright, he started measuring the metabolites of the hormones.
Okay.
Like the breakdown, what could they break down into? And then he started identifying, they break down this way because you're deficient in magnesium.
Okay.
Or this way because you're deficient in B6. And then there's zinc comes into it. All these minerals are important. So again, instead of spending hundreds of dollars and trying to analyze the tests, I just gave everybody their magnesium, and take some zinc and take some B6, but in small amounts. And you might, and I eventually, after about 45 years of this, I finally created some of my own products so that I know exactly what to give people and what they're getting, because it's all about the absorption. If you aren't absorbing your minerals, like calcium, for example, we got into a horrendous problem with calcium supplementation. And it's only in the past decade that we've seen at least half a dozen studies that show women who are popping calcium pills are at higher risk for heart disease, because the calcium only absorbs like about 4%. And the other 96% is causing constipation, deposits in tissues, this business about DCIS, breast pre-cancer.
Right.
It's calcification caused by too much calcium in the diet.
Yeah. Need magnesium.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
Right.
Okay. I'm learning from you. Okay. So it sounds like the symptoms then for men. So the symptoms for women, I was reading through your list of symptoms, of which there are many that are happening for women, are menstrual irregularities, menstrual cramps, heavy periods, light periods, vaginal dryness, vaginal thinning. These are all the kinds of things that happen. Perimenopause. What's happening with my hormones that's causing this menstrual, like all these things?
Out of balance. And I don't think you can anymore just say your estrogen is getting low and your progesterone is getting low too. It's the relationship of the estrogen to the progesterone. And when you start getting the synthetic or the xenoestrogens, it just widens that gap even more. And the solution is not just to give a whole bunch of progesterone. I mean, that's what a lot of natural medicine doctors thought for many years. Dr. John Lee, he was doing research on giving progesterone. I mean, when I was in my family practice, gosh, in the 80s, I was giving women progesterone suppositories. They did not have, in Europe, they're into suppositories, but not North America. So they didn't have progesterone orally or in transdermal form to treat PMS. So I studied Katrina Dalton's work, and she was all about progesterone suppositories for people with terrible PMS because their progesterone was low and their estrogen was high. So I started very early on looking at the hormones, and I really think at this point it's got so much to do with yeast blocking our estrogen or increasing our estrogen with the xenoestrogens, which can come from plastics, and we're covered in plastics. And even this business about perimenopause as a designation, that was a made-up term. There really is no such thing as perimenopause, but it's almost like the medical community decided to institutionalize and medicalize everything about women, from puberty and then pregnancy, and then now you're perimenopause, and now you're menopause, and it's all over.
Right.
I mean, I've been in menopause for 20 years, and it's certainly not all over.
Right.
I'm feeling healthier now than I did when I was major stressed out in my 40s.
Right.
So.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, there's I guess I'll probably say it a half dozen times in our discussion here that it's some basic remedies of hydration, mineralization, cleansing, and treating yeast. But when you say to someone, well, you can deal with this with your diet, or there's certain lifestyle things you can do, you really have to grab their attention. And I don't grab attention by yelling at people or threatening them. I just offer the information.
Right.
And you can take it or leave it.
Right.
I thought a couple of years ago, I really thought that education was the way I was going to get across this information. And look, I've written 33 books, I got 108 Kindles. I mean, I'm writing all the time. Actually, this interview gave me such an idea for a new book, and I'm just in Kindle books now, because when you said you wanted to focus on menopause and perimenopause, I said, oh my gosh, nobody's asking me directly about those conditions anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I do not hear people say, oh, I've got menopause symptoms, what can I do? They are saying, my adrenals are shot, my thyroid is low, you know, I may have Lyme disease, you know, it's fibromyalgia, I've got chronic fatigue, it's all these huge, expansive problems. And then they'll say, yeah, and I have some hot flashes.
Wow. Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Wow.
So what I did then is I went back to, actually I wrote a paper years ago that I wanted to publish in the Canadian Medical Journal. And it was about my experience with yeast overgrowth.
Mm-hmm.
And I called it clinical findings in 2,000 cases of candidiasis. And what that showed me, let me turn off my mail because I'm getting a boing. The 2,000 cases of candidiasis showed me that the symptoms that people were having were being added on to from what I started off with in my medical practice in 1979 was people who were complaining of hypoglycemia and allergies.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of years later, I started to look at yeast overgrowth. And then it was chronic fatigue. And then it was fibromyalgia. And then it was adrenal exhaustion and thyroid deficiency, hypothyroidism. And then it became everything all together.
Mm.
So that when a person these days goes to HMO and says, you know, these are my top 20 symptoms, what does the doctor do in their 7-minute appointment? But sends them off to a specialist for this symptom or that symptom, or right away says, well, this is a hypochondriac, you know, take some Prozac.
Right.
And because it just does not seem possible that people have all these symptoms, but they do. And what I've become the doctor, a resort doctor.
Yes, last resort. Help me.
Yeah. Doctor of last resort. And so I've had to focus down, give people solutions. And instead of tracking down every symptom and find out where it came from, I was very fortunate because I was well versed in yeast overgrowth, and then because of my own heart palpitations, magnesium became huge in my life and in my research. And come to find out that a lot of this anxiety that women have, magnesium deficiency, too much calcium, magnesium, heart palpitations, magnesium. It's just on and on and on.
Right, so the symptoms that we're thinking, it's menopause. I have foggy brain because I have menopause. I'm stressed out because I have menopause. It's like, no, it could be a magnesium deficiency.
Exactly. So that what happens when you're of the age of menopause, your doctor right away is going to put you in the menopause basket because it's easier to do that. It's easier to send you to a gynecologist. And I have serious doubts about what's going to be happening in medicine. I went with a friend the other day to her first primary care visit because she wanted a dermatology appointment or referral, and she wanted to get her a colonoscopy. And the primary care doctor, a very nice woman, sat way across the room, did not get up to examine her, And my friend, I was in the room too. She said, well, shall I come over there so you can examine my skin? Oh, no. I'll get a technician to come in and take a picture of it and send it to the dermatologist, and they'll decide whether you should be seen.
What? Oh my God.
I know, I wish I'd taped it.
Oh my God, that's
bizarre.
awful.
And this is after she had her weight taken with her clothes and shoes on in a dirty hallway, her blood pressure taken over her clothes. And this is medicine. This is
Yikes.
medical care these days. So we're on our own.
Okay, so I have a question for you. I think this is the tie into what you said, but I'm not sure. And I learned something about the endocrine system. I didn't even know it existed. So the endocrine system, what I found, tell me if I'm wrong, because I'm not a medical person at all or scientific. So the endocrine system is what produces hormones. And there's pituitary gland, thyroid, parathyroid, pancreas, and adrenal glands that are creating these hormones. So if we have a hormone imbalance, it can be any of those things. Like if I'm having hot flashes, it can be any of those things that are causing it. Is that right?
Yes, to a certain extent, but you can't isolate them, because what can happen is you can get an adrenal rush from your adrenal glands that causes your heart to palpitate and your pulse to rise, and you can get a flush. And that could be a hot flash feeling, which makes you think it's a hormonal problem.
Yes, okay. Yeah.
Whereas, the thyroid, when it gets deficient, you can get cold hands and feet. And you want to be warmed up. You look forward to the hot flashes.
Right.
But you're right. And the pituitary pineal in the brain, they orchestrate the drive on the hormones. If your thyroid is starting to get weak, the pituitary pushes your thyroid to work harder, and that can kind of make you race for a while. There's a situation with the thyroid. Sometimes it's hyper, and sometimes it's hypo. And it does make it tricky, but again, it's balance.
Right, but it's unclear what's the cause. We may think, like you said, I think I'm mapping this back to what you said before. I could go to a doctor and like, oh, menopause, go get your hormones measured with that blood test. Goodbye. Whereas you would say, oh gosh, it could be your thyroid. It could be all these different things that are causing the symptoms of hot flashes or chronic fatigue or any of those things, because it's all this orchestration of all these things in your endocrine system. Did I get it right?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And then what doctors tend to do, even natural medicine doctors, I've had clients come to me and say, well, my doctor said my adrenals are low, my thyroid is low, my sex hormones are low, but first I have to treat such and such. And I said, there's no first about the body.
Right.
It's all kind of interacting.
Right.
It is not going to stop and let you treat one thing and not treat the other. So maybe they're thinking about bioidentical hormone replacement. And in the thyroid world, that's what a lot of natural medicine doctors did. They said, oh, these synthetic thyroid hormones, they're bad. Let's use natural, like Armour thyroid. And not so much bioidentical, I should say. It's more like desiccated thyroid, Armour thyroid product. And they thought, that's the key. And then I get all these patients say, well, I can't even take Armour thyroid. What's wrong? And in my mineral research, I realized that there are 9 minerals that support the thyroid. 9. And what do you think when you think of thyroid? What mineral do you think of? Iodine. And then people are pumping, mega doses of iodine.
Yes.
And what happens? Well, it helps some and it hurts some. And I don't like to be giving something that can hurt anybody.
Right.
So when I look at the thyroid, you need your iodine, yes. But the pathway from iodine to the next step, it needs selenium. And the next pathway needs manganese. And another pathway needs copper. Magnesium, of course.
Right.
So myself, after I created my 100% absorbed magnesium, I went into multiple minerals. And I put in 12 minerals. 9 of them are for the thyroid, but it's not just a thyroid supplement. But 2 months into taking my Remite, it's called, REMYTE, I was able to get off my 60 milligrams of Armour thyroid. And I hadn't even thought about it, actually. Just one day I thought, oh my gosh, I'm a little more hyperactive than usual. I'm a little speedier. My pulse is elevated. So, being a typical doctor, I just quit it instead of weaning it off, as I would tell my patients.
Okay, so this goes back to, and this is so interesting. So if you're having these symptoms, right, whether it's weight gain, hair loss, vaginal dryness, periods, osteoporosis, all these things that people attribute to, like they just lump into, you're old and you have menopause. It could be a litany of different things. And so that's what I think I heard you say. It could be, there's all these other systems creating hormones, and then there's stuff in our environment with the xenoestrogens that are causing. So there's all sorts of things that are affecting our balance. And so, and I know you've said this 100 times, and I want you to say it another 100 times, but what I think I heard you say is mineralization. So the thing that you just mentioned, like you kind of thought, well, I'm taking all these minerals and gosh, I don't need to take my thyroid medicine anymore and I feel better. So regardless of the source, whether it's your pituitary, thyroid, pancreas, adrenal, gonads, just take minerals. Like that's what, right? Because irrespective, take minerals. Okay, so mineralization is one. Getting your yeast under control is another. Detox because of all these things. And hydration, xeno things. Those are the things that you do. So that's kind of the treatment plan that is in your book. So let's talk about a little bit those. We have about 12 more minutes. So tell us about first the mineralization. And I read through, like, there's minerals and herbs, of which there are like almost 25 that are possible. There's a lot. I may have counted wrong, but there's a lot. So what should I just take a multivitamin, or like what's in my, if I want to do mineralization and get the right herbs and I'm 50 and all these other things, what is there 1-2 pills that I can take? First of all, I know getting my diet in control and detoxing, but if I were to take, since we're on minerals, what would I take? I would take Remite.
Right, the Remite, but I even back up from there and talk about water intake.
Okay.
You have to have enough water. Yes, here we go. Enough water to get into the cells and hydrate the cells, and then pull in the minerals. And then the minerals in the cells pulls in more water. And they do their job by having enough or a balance of the two, the water and the minerals. And even just with the water, I start with sea salt in water. Sea salt or Himalayan salt. And some people say, oh, Himalayan salt, that's a rock, and it's in a mountain, it's not good because the mountain was at the bottom of the ocean to pick up that salt originally. So, stop it.
Just take the Himalayan salt in your water. How much would you put? Like a teaspoon, or what would you do?
Excuse me, I have to drink my salted water. I'm choking with the excitement. So you take half your body weight in pounds.
Okay.
So 100 pounds, half of that is 50 ounces a day. In each quart of water, that's, 32 ounces, you put a quarter to a half a teaspoon of sea salt or Himalayan salt.
Okay.
And you will seriously learn to love the taste and think that plain water is just boring afterwards. And it really gets you drinking water. And I can't tell you how many people, I have a weekly radio show.
Right.
And people just want to, I can't believe it. I resisted drinking the water for so long, but once I started drinking it and drinking it with the sea salt, I feel so much better. I recover faster when I exercise. I don't get up at night to urinate because the water follows the sea salt and your other minerals and stays in the cells and does its thing. Does its metabolism, breaks down. The H2O breaks down, and the air is excreted. You breathe out. So the amount of H2O that goes in is not the same amount that comes out because it's being used in metabolism.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so water hydration is one, and the mineralization. So what should I be taking in terms of minerals?
Well, then, to make it easy on people, I tried a 2-year wellness program to lay out all the lifestyle. Right. Nobody wants to do that.
Right.
They just wanted me, give me what to take. Okay, so I take the Remag. Remag is it's 100% absorbed at the cellular level. See, with my heart palpitations and terrible leg cramps and my mild IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, any pill or powder I took of magnesium caused the laxative effect.
Right.
So I was after mineral companies for 10 years to make a magnesium that had no laxative effect. Nobody was interested because it was like they wanted to be able to. Anyway, they weren't interested.
Right.
So I created Remag. What it is when you have this Remag, it's a magnesium chloride. But it's broken down and the ions of magnesium are stabilized so that when this mineral is in your body, those ions are on their own and they go right into the cell. Otherwise, a magnesium chloride mineral would have to poke at the cell and hope to break down at the right time when the cell could absorb it. So that means the absorption of most minerals is very low.
Oh, I see. Okay. Interesting.
We know that magnesium oxide, for example, is only absorbed 4% into the bloodstream. We do not even have measures for what's going on into the cells.
Okay, got it. So the reason why you've just had to make your own, which is Remite, which we can find on your website, drcarolyndean.com. Okay, that's the mineralization part. So you said hydration, mineralization, and those two are tied together because if you actually aren't drinking water, then that's not helpful. Then there's getting your yeast down and then detoxing. What are those?
Right. Well, after the Remag, it was a Remite with the 12 minerals.
Excuse me,
we covered that with the thyroid.
Right.
And with the yeast, you know what happens actually with people who have yeast and they start their Remag and Remite? Those minerals, by getting into the cells, act as detoxifiers. They help dump toxins because it's like, I don't want this heavy metal in here, so they can get rid of lead and mercury from the cells. And chemicals and toxins, because a certain percentage of people, mostly women, they'll develop rashes and vaginitis when they take their minerals and they get dehydrated because the yeast is detoxing. These chemicals are detoxing. And then, most people who listen to me, they're already avoiding sugar, avoiding gluten, avoiding dairy, because sugar and dairy are sugars that feed yeast. And it used to be I just told people to avoid wheat, but now I say, gluten. It's gotten so crazy with the gluten, the way the wheat has been hybridized and all the rest of it. I just say you might as well just avoid gluten. So these flours, they break down very readily into glucose molecules. The starch breaks down into sugars. Just eat a piece of bread. Keep a piece of bread in your mouth for a minute or so. It turns sweet because it's breaking down into sugar. So you're trying not to feed the yeast, and then that's what you avoid: sugar, gluten, and dairy. You eat garlic. A lot of people talk about the fermented foods. I think that you should try them. Some people say, well, doesn't fermentation grow yeast? Well, maybe not. You have to try it yourself. Personally, if I eat a quarter cup of sauerkraut, it's game over. Too much gas and bloating. Oh my gosh.
Right.
Yeah. But if I eat a tablespoon or even 2 a day in my salad, it's just fine.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it can be just the amount as well.
Okay, so detoxing is no gluten, no gluten, no dairy, no sugar.
Yeah.
That's what the detoxing part of it, and then also try some of the yeast, like those drinks that they have, those whatever drinks, and then sauerkraut, fermented kind of pickles. Are those fermented things?
Yeah, pickles are fermented as well. They can be helpful. Kefir is good.
Yeah.
Unsweetened kefir.
Yep, I've been.
And you can find
Check.
Yeah, you can find lists of these foods, and the detoxing is happening just by drinking water too, CJ.
Right, and the minerals, like you said. If I were to do. Okay, so then it's really just about diet. If I were to do a couple of things, the first line of attack is not like just go take rub creams all over myself and melt all over Hawaii. Or
my legs.
Yes, exactly. Or taking a pill. It's basically the first line of order is like drink water, take minerals, and then basically try to avoid as much as you can sugar, flour, gluten, and
dairy.
Yes.
Non-fermented dairy.
Non-fermented.
Actually, I don't know if you came across this. What I also did in my protocols, I created a product for detoxification. It's 2 sulfur-based amino acids. One of them, methionine, is a precursor to glutathione. Glutathione is the most important antioxidant detoxifier in the body. When I was working with autistic kids, the doctors were doing intravenous glutathione, for Pete's sakes.
Wow.
And pushing the glutathione in liposomal form, and very expensive as well. And I realized with those protocols and also the chelation protocols, where they do intravenous EDTA, you can force too much detoxification on a person, and they're, as I say, too toxic to detox.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what I do is with this Realign product is give them the precursors to the glutathione so their body can make it when it wants to. There's no forcing about it. And there's a taurine amino acid, which is also supportive of the heart. Taurine and methionine are both sulfur-based. Sulfur is extremely important for the sulfation detoxification pathways in the liver. And added to the formula, I have 4 methylated B vitamins. Because what's happened, and in your life coaching, I'm sure you've heard of people, now I have MTHFR, genetic abnormality, which means I can't methylate, and now I'm doomed. All this genetic testing by these alternative medicine doctors drives me crazy.
Right.
Because they're here's the top 100 genetic abnormalities you have. I mean, you cannot throw that at people and expect them to be sane about, oh my gosh.
Right.
Because genes really don't control us. What controls us is the epigenetic factors that turn genes on and off.
And I have a ton. Just to wrap up, I go onto the Fired Up with CJ Facebook page, YouTube channel, website, www.firedupwithcj.com. Also check out drcarolyndean.com's website, because then you can get the Remite. Tell me the products so if I wanted to if I'm like, give me a pill, you're like, okay, here.
Yeah.
Drink water, whatever your weight divided by 2, whatever that, go back and listen. So drink water, get the Remite.
Remite, Realign.
Okay.
And then when you're really into all of that, do RNA drops, which is our miracle. What is it? Barley sprout, non-gluten barley sprouts. That's
and if I'm like, okay, and then let's say I'm one of those kind of suspicious types. I'm like, I'm not taking her stuff. She's just trying to make me take her stuff, right?
Exactly.
Right. And so if I'm like that, I could try a multivitamin. Like, what's the alternative? Like, I don't believe in this stuff, but look, I'll try it. What are some alternatives? We can take is there a multivitamin that you recommend and a mineral thing?
Yes, all of that is on my resources page.
Okay.
I make sure people get food-based and organic supplements, because the synthetics are just so 99% of supplements are synthetic.
Okay.
And then the minerals, most of them aren't absorbed. But yeah, I know. I do hear from people who say, "Oh, you're just trying to sell me something."
Right.
And I said, well, look at the first 45 years of my career,
Right.
when I wasn't selling you something. And most of my information is freely available. And people can choose what they want. But what we invariably hear is, yeah, I tried all kinds of other magnesiums, but it wasn't until I got to Remag that I really found I was absorbing it. So, I'm not apologizing anymore for having products.
Right, yeah. Well, you tried to get those vitamin companies to do it, and they weren't. So it's like, you're forcing me to make these things so that they work. Right. Okay, so we actually have to wrap up. Thank you so much. I could talk to you forever. Thank you. We have Dr. Carolyn Dean. She's talking about her work on hormones, 50 years of hormones and other things. Go to drcarolyndean.com. Thank you so much.
Thank you, CJ. Great interview.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show, and love your support in any way by giving me comments below, or to subscribe to the show, or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support.